Hello there, and welcome back to the Science Sleepy Minds. Right now, you're probably lying in a cozy bed or maybe tucked up on the couch, eyes getting heavy, mind starting to drift. Outside your window, a street lamp hums softly, throwing warm yellow light across your room. Your blanket feels real, the air cool against your face. The soft background sounds utterly familiar. But here's the thing, none of it is quite what it seems. That lamp, that blanket, even the you curled up under it, if we zoom in far enough, it's all just clouds of particles flickering in and out of something we call existence. And the kicker, you probably won't survive this truth bomb with your concept of reality intact. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the universe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're surrounded by solid objects, walls, pillows, books, maybe your phone glowing faintly nearby. But if you could shrink yourself down to the atomic level, you'd find that all these solids are, well, mostly empty space. Like really empty. Atoms are over 99.9999% nothing. In fact, if the nucleus of an atom were the size of a peanut, the outer electron shell would be about a football field away. Everything you're touching right now is held together more by electromagnetic repulsion than any kind of physical solidity. You're essentially levitating on electric fields. Elegant, right? Historians still argue whether Democritus, the ancient Greek thinker, really grasped how right he was when he first proposed atoms around 400 BCE. Of course, his atoms were indivisible and solid, more like cosmic Lego bricks than the quantum soup we know now. But the idea that the world is built from tiny, unseen units, that's lingered through millennia. But even knowing all this, your brain is stubborn. It continues to whisper, this is a cup, this is a chair, this is real. It's an illusion it performs with such skill that you've probably never questioned it. Yet on the quantum level, particles blink in and out of existence, exist in multiple places at once, or refuse to commit to a definite location until observed. Kind of like your friend who won't RSVP to brunch until the very morning of. Take the double-slit experiment, a classic piece of quantum weirdness. Fire tiny particles, electrons, say, through two slits. If unobserved, they behave like waves and form an interference pattern like ripples on a pond. But watch them too closely, and suddenly they act like particles, choosing one slit or the other. No funny business. It's as if reality knows you're looking and decides to straighten up. Here, where your brain enters the chat again. It takes this chaotic quantum ballet and smooths it over into a nice, steady performance of nothing to see here. It edits the noise, stitches the fragments into one convincing stream, and calls it the world. like the world's most confident, unreliable narrator. And let's not forget about light. Light behaves both as a wave and a particle. It has no mass but can still knock electrons loose. It's fast, the fastest thing, but even light can be bent by gravity. You're seeing this world through photons that left surfaces, bounced into your eyes, and then somehow triggered electricity in the brain that made you think, oh, that's blue, that's a cat, that's my favorite mug. A parade of particles colliding with your face, giving birth to meaning. Quirky side fact. In the 17th century, Isaac Newton believed light consisted of tiny particles, while Christian Huygens insisted it was a wave. They argued. Newton won mostly because he was Newton. But centuries later, Einstein showed they were both kind of right. That's science for you. A group project where no one has the full story. And don't get too smug about the fact that your senses are lying to you. Your entire body is built to operate within this illusion. Take your skin, for example. What you call touch is just your nerves responding to force fields between atoms. You never actually touch anything. That kiss, that high five, that oh-so-satisfying belly flop into a hotel bed. It's all electromagnetic resistance, never direct contact. Kind of kills the romance, but hey, now you can brag you've never really fallen flat on your face. At this point, you're probably wondering, why go to all this effort? Why does reality bother with the masquerade? Well, one theory is that your brain evolved not to see truth, but to see useful lies. If seeing the world as it is slows you down, confuses you, or makes you walk off a cliff, it gets you removed from the gene pool. So evolution says, let's just give you the Cliff's Notes version. Table equals solid. Fire equals hot. Tiger equals run. This illusion isn't a bug, it's the feature. And as strange as it sounds, your conscious experience might be the tip of a vast processing iceberg, most of it humming silently below awareness. It's like you're in a movie theater watching a high-res action film, but backstage, there's a whole production team juggling camera angles, script revisions, and the occasional accidental explosion. Let's go back to those particles for a second. What even are they? The more physicists investigate, the more they realize that these so-called building blocks aren't things at all, but excitations in fields, ripples in invisible, all-pervading energies. Think of the universe as a calm pond, and a particle is just a splash in one area. Here's the wild part. The same field might produce both electrons and muons, depending on how it wiggles. That's like shaking a Jell-O mold and accidentally getting either strawberry or lime depending on your rhythm. One fringe theory floating around suggests that these quantum fields might be projections of information from a lower dimensional reality, a kind of cosmic hologram. You're not walking through space, you're decoding a projection. Maybe you are the projection. Deep breaths. If you're feeling a little floaty now, don't worry. That's just your brain trying to process the idea that the solid world is more like a swirling storm of ghostly energy, ordered only by observation and context. You haven't lost your mind. You've just peeked behind the curtain. And the curtain, spoiler alert, it's made of probability. You close your eyes for a second, maybe you're stretching or blinking slowly, and when you open them again, the room feels reassuringly stable. That same lamp, that same blanket, those same familiar shapes are right where they were before. But here's the thing. Your brain has already filled in dozens of blanks in that moment. It's not just showing you the world, it's creating it. Your brain is the ultimate illusionist, the con artist that lives between your ears. You think you're seeing the world directly, but in reality, you're experiencing a hallucination that just happens to line up with what other people more or less agree on. Welcome to the simulation, one your own body is constantly running. Take vision. Only a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum is visible to humans. Bees can see ultraviolet. Snakes can see infrared. You get a narrow band of wavelengths your brain turns into colors. Everything outside that band is invisible to you, not because it doesn't exist, but because evolution decided you didn't need to know. Helpful, but also deeply limiting. In fact, a lot of what you think of as reality is just your brain stitching together shadows and signals. Your eyes don't see an entire scene all at once. They scan it in quick, jittery jumps called saccades. But your brain hides the jumpiness, smooths out the footage, and presents it all like a crisp, stable picture. It's like using duct tape to fix a movie projector, but somehow it works. Here's the creepy part. Even when you're staring directly at something, you're not seeing it in real time. Light has to travel, signals have to process, and neural pathways need to fire. You're always lagging a fraction of a second behind what's actually happening. You're living in a constant state of catch-up, yet you feel perfectly synchronized. It's like your brain is buffering the universe, and you never even noticed the loading screen. Back in the 1930s, Gestalt psychologists were obsessed with how perception worked. They realized that the human brain doesn't just record data, it actively shapes it. You don't just see a bunch of black and white splotches, you see a Dalmatian. You don't just hear scattered notes, you hear a melody. The whole is always more than the sum of its parts, mostly because your brain loves shortcuts and hates ambiguity. It's the original life hacker. Fringe detail for you, there's a condition called visual agnosia. People with it can see just fine, but they can't recognize what they're looking at. A man might see a rose, describe its color and shape perfectly, but still have no idea it's a flower. Their eyes are working. Their brain's not connecting the dots. It's proof that perception isn't passive, it's constructed. And this goes beyond vision. Touch, hearing, even your sense of self, all of it is a best-guess effort from your brain. Ever been in a completely silent room and heard phantom sounds? or felt your phone vibrate in your pocket when it definitely did. These are called phantom perceptions, and they happen because your brain is so committed to its simulation that it occasionally fills in data that doesn't even exist. Let's not forget dreams. Your brain creates entire worlds in your sleep: sounds, textures, people you haven't seen in years. And during a particularly vivid dream, you don't question its reality. A giant talking sandwich is chasing you through a mall. Sure, makes total sense at 3 a.m. Your brain's only rule is, make it immersive enough and they'll believe anything. Historians still argue whether the philosopher René Descartes was being too dramatic when he doubted the very existence of the world around him. "I think, therefore I am," he declared, "but not I see, therefore it's real." He knew perception could be tricked. His famous thought experiment imagined a demon constantly feeding you false experiences. Today, we just call that Monday. Here's something that'll rattle you a little. Your brain can be tricked into seeing things that aren't there with shocking ease. Enter the rubber hand illusion. In a lab, you sit with one hand hidden behind a screen while a fake rubber hand sits in front of you. A researcher taps both your real and fake hands in sync. After a while, your brain adopts the rubber hand as your own. If someone suddenly injures it, you flinch, genuinely afraid. Your brain has been fooled by coordination alone. You think your hand is fake, but the fake hand, you think it's yours. Or how about synesthesia, a condition where stimulation of one sense involuntarily triggers another? People with synesthesia might see colors when they hear music or taste words. The world to them is a fusion of sensory experiences that don't align with the so-called objective reality. But here's the kicker. Brain scans show that these experiences are neurologically real to them. So whose reality is more accurate? Even your sense of now is fake. Neuroscientists have found that your brain takes about 80 milliseconds to process incoming data, and it tends to bundle stimuli together within that window so everything feels seamless. If your brain processed each event exactly when it happened, your world would feel choppy, disjointed, and honestly, pretty nauseating. So instead, it edits the footage like a sneaky little film editor, giving you a highlight reel that feels like the director's cut. You're not living in the present. You're living in the recent past, just smoothed over. And your sense of presence, also an illusion. When virtual reality is good enough, when the lights and sounds and movement line up just right, your brain accepts the digital as real. You lean away from fake cliffs. You feel fear in pixelated danger. You know it's a game, and yet your palms sweat anyway. That's how low the bar is to fool your perception. This leads us into an unsettling but increasingly accepted theory. Conscious experience is a controlled hallucination. The world isn't out there, at least not the way you think it is. Your brain generates a model, updates it constantly using sensory input, and projects that model onto what you call reality. Some researchers even say consciousness arises from this model making. You are not experiencing the world. You're experiencing your brain's version of the world. But don't panic, or do, up to you. The fact that your perception is a reconstruction doesn't make it meaningless. If anything, it means your consciousness is one of the most complex feats in the universe. You're not just observing reality, you're rendering it in real time, like a high-end graphics engine strapped to a pile of biology and dreams. So next time you feel something, see something, or hear a random noise in the night, remember, it's all just part of the brain's great magic trick. And lucky for you, the magician never explains how it's done. So let's talk about color. You look around your space, the deep navy of the night sky outside, the soft beige of your bedsheet, the blinking red light on your charger, and you think, ah, these are real, these are colors. But no, not really. Color, as it turns out, is one of the most convincing lies your brain tells you. There's no such thing as red or blue floating out there in the universe. Those are just labels your brain slaps on specific wavelengths of light. You're not seeing color. You're interpreting electromagnetic radiation, and your brain is just jazzing it up for the experience, like putting filters on invisible math. Your eyes contain 3 types of cones, photoreceptors tuned to different wavelengths. Short, medium, and long. That's blue, green, and red, more or less. Everything you perceive as a rich spectrum of color. It's just your brain combining the activity of those cones in different ratios. Your favorite turquoise mug isn't inherently turquoise. It's bouncing light in a way that hits your cones just right, and your brain says, nice, that's blue-green. Let's roll with it. But here's a wild one. Some people have a 4th type of cone. It's called tetrachromacy, and it allows them to see colors the rest of us can't even imagine. We're talking shades between shades, colors that exist in a dimension we'll never access. Historians still argue whether certain artists, think Monet or Van Gogh, had tetrachromatic vision, which might explain the lush, almost impossible richness of their palettes. But on the flip side, some people can't even tell red from green. Color blindness affects millions, and it shows just how fragile this whole seeing the same world idea really is. You might think you and your friend are looking at the same sunset, but your brains are giving you completely different interpretations. And yet, you both say, wow, beautiful. Because what we call color isn't a property of the world. It's a shared agreement between hallucinating brains. Now brace yourself for something stranger. Mantis shrimp. These absurd little sea creatures have up to 16 types of photoreceptors. That's more than 5 times what you've got. Scientists once thought they could see colors you couldn't dream of. But more recent studies suggest that despite their hardware, they don't actually process color in the same way we do. Their brains may be more point and click than Photoshop. So the creature with the most complex visual system on Earth might still have the aesthetic taste of a toaster. Humbling. Of course, color isn't just a perception, it's a powerful manipulator. Red makes you alert. Blue calms you down. Fast food chains bathe you in yellow and red because they know those colors make you hungry. Courtrooms avoid harsh green lighting because it makes people look sickly and untrustworthy. The color isn't changing reality, but your brain thinks it is and reacts accordingly. In ancient times, color had mystical power. Egyptians used lapis lazuli to signify the heavens. Chinese emperors wore yellow as a symbol of authority and earth centrality. Even now, we say feeling blue or green with envy. These aren't just poetic flourishes. They reflect deep associations embedded in the visual perceptual map your brain uses to make sense of the world. And you don't even need light to see color. Ever pressed your eyes shut and seen swirling purples or reds behind your eyelids? Those aren't hallucinations. They're called phosphenes, and they're created by mechanical pressure on the retina. Your brain is so eager to see color that it sometimes creates it from scratch. No external stimulus required. It's like when the Wi-Fi cuts out and your phone still tries to open Instagram anyway. Same energy. Historians still debate how ancient people perceived color at all. In Homer's Odyssey, the sea is described as wine dark, not blue. There's almost no mention of the color blue in early texts. Some scholars think people couldn't perceive blue clearly until more recently in human history. Others argue it was there all along, but less important culturally and so underdescribed. Did the ancients see a different sky, or just interpret it differently? And speaking of sky, here's a fun, slightly unsettling detail. The sky isn't actually blue. That hue you see up there is a trick of Rayleigh scattering, shorter wavelengths of sunlight bouncing around the atmosphere and smacking your eyes in the right way. There is no blueness in the sky's physical matter. It's all just particles of air bullying some colors more than others. But your brain gives it a name and turns it into poetry. Color also becomes political. Fashion, flags, movements, each one uses color to signal identity. Pink for softness, black for rebellion, green for sustainability. But again, these aren't real qualities of the color itself. They're associations built over time through culture and repetition. The same red that means love in one context means danger in another, or discounts if you're in a department store. Now here, where things get extra slippery, colors can disappear entirely depending on context. Optical illusions exploit this all the time. Ever seen the dress? White and gold or blue and black? The internet's most famous argument wasn't about fashion. It was about how different brains interpret ambiguous lighting. Same pixels, different realities. And it's not that one person is right and the other is wrong. The brain just makes its best guess, using experience, context, and let's be honest, a little attitude. In fact, many visual illusions reveal just how little you're seeing of what's actually there. Take the checker-shadow illusion. Two squares on a checkerboard, one in shadow, one in light. Your brain swears they're different shades. They're not. They're the same, you can even measure them, but your brain overrides the data to preserve the story it believes. Shadows make things darker, that's what we're seeing. It's like your brain pulling an executive veto on raw facts. Democracy be damned. You exist inside a constantly colorized fiction, one shaped by biology, culture, lighting, and maybe even your mood. The colors you see when you're happy aren't the same ones you see when you're anxious. The sunset after a breakup looks duller, the leaves on your walk home less vibrant. It's not the world that's changing, it's the lens you're using to filter it. And yet knowing that doesn't make color less beautiful. In fact, it might make it more so. These flickers of wavelength and sensation are handcrafted by your own mind. That favorite hoodie, your brain made that hue just for you. Your cat's green eyes, a shared illusion that somehow still feels realer than real. The universe didn't bother painting itself. You did that. So next time you see something beautiful, sunset bouquet, neon sign buzzing outside a corner deli, remember, it's not color you're seeing. It's meaning, wrapped in light, interpreted through a squishy orb of neurons. And that might just be the most human thing of all. Time feels so obvious. You wake up, you do things, you go to bed, clocks tick. Sunsets happen, your coffee cools down. Time moves forward because of course it does, right? Except, what if it does? You glance at your phone to check the hour. That little digital display feels like a comforting anchor, doesn't it? But the numbers it shows you aren't the universe ticking forward. They're your species' attempt to map something slippery and maybe even illusory. Time might not be flowing forward like a river at all. It might be static, like a giant block, and you're just moving through it, frame by frame, like a character in a stop-motion film. Welcome to the brain-melting zone of theoretical physics, where now might be nothing more than a convenient myth. You already know your perception of time is flexible. A boring lecture drags on forever. A vacation week disappears in a blink. Time slows when you're scared, speeds up when you're distracted. That's your brain tinkering with internal clocks, not the universe bending. Still, it proves the point. You don't experience time as it is. You experience it as your nervous system feels it. And that's not exactly reliable. The ancient Babylonians were among the first to divide time into hours and minutes. Historians still argue whether this was purely practical, for farming, rituals, taxes, or something deeper, a need to control the uncontrollable. Either way, they gave us 60-minute hours and 24-hour days, and we've been following that arbitrary system ever since, even though time itself doesn't care. Meanwhile, physics has been stirring the pot for over a century. Einstein's theory of relativity shattered the comforting illusion of a shared now. Time is relative, he said, not fixed, not universal. Two people traveling at different speeds or living in different gravitational fields will literally experience time differently. Twins separated by spaceflight. One will age more slowly. That's not sci-fi. That's reality. It's called time dilation, and astronauts on the International Space Station age slightly slower than their Earth-bound counterparts. Here's the kicker: space and time are actually fused into a single entity, spacetime. The universe isn't a stage where events happen in order. It's a four-dimensional block with length, width, height, and time all wrapped into one. From this perspective, past, present, and future already exist. You're not surfing a timeline. You're tracing a pre-carved path. Every moment you've lived and every moment you will live might already be sitting there fully formed. Feeling queasy yet? This view is called the block universe theory, and it suggests that time doesn't flow at all. Instead, your consciousness is just moving through different slices of reality, giving you the illusion of progression. Kind of like flipping through a flip book. The character thinks things are changing, but to the outside observer, all the pages are already drawn. Fringe detail for your dream journal. Some physicists argue that retrocausality might be real. That's the idea that events in the future can influence the past. It's still hotly debated and has yet to find mainstream acceptance, but some quantum experiments hint that outcomes might depend on choices made after the experiment has already started. Cause and effect, getting tangled in weird ways. Don't try to time travel with that info, but maybe raise an eyebrow at your next déjà vu. And then there's the issue of entropy. The second law of thermodynamics says entropy, or disorder, always increases over time. This, more than anything, might be what creates the illusion of time moving forward. Eggs don't unscramble, ice melts, hairlines recede. Entropy gives time an arrow, a direction, but it might not be fundamental. Some scientists believe that in the deepest laws of physics, time is symmetrical. The equations work the same whether time is going forward or backward. So why do we only remember the past and not the future? Historians still debate whether early human cultures had the same concept of time as we do now. Many lived cyclically, seasons, harvests, moon phases. Time wasn't a line, it was a circle, repeating, familiar. The linear, progressive model of time is a relatively recent invention, shaped by industrialization, capitalism, and a lot of ticking clocks. Your ancestors might have stared at the same moon you do and seen not a schedule, but a rhythm. Meanwhile, your brain is terrible at telling time. If I asked you to sit still for 1 minute without a clock, your guess might be wildly off. Why? Because you don't actually feel time pass. You reconstruct it after the fact based on memory, emotion, and attention. That's why trauma can make time feel like it's frozen, and happiness makes it fly. Time doesn't move, you do, emotionally and cognitively. Here's something eerie to chew on. The closer you look at the present, the more it vanishes. Try to pinpoint now, and you'll find it's already gone. Your awareness is always a few milliseconds behind real events. You're living in a slightly delayed playback, like a live stream buffering behind the scenes. So when exactly are you? This illusion of the present moment might be a kind of temporal hallucination, a convenient trick your brain uses to package experience neatly. You're never really in the now. You're always in the just past. Kind of like getting a postcard from your own life, arriving after the event. In Buddhist philosophy, time is often seen as an illusion, or at least a mental construction. The only truth, they say, is the present moment. But even that is slippery, as you now know. What does it mean to be present if your brain's version of the moment is always slightly behind? Are you ever really here? Let's get even weirder. In quantum physics, some interpretations suggest that time might emerge from entanglement. That is, time as we know it doesn't exist at the smallest levels. It's a product of how quantum systems interact. Some cosmologists even propose that time is an illusion that emerges from a deeper timeless reality. Try putting that on a wristwatch. And what about dreams? In dream space, time obeys none of the rules. You live through hours in seconds, skip between decades, and relive the same scene again and again. Your dreaming brain doesn't care about causality or clocks. It just serves up a stew of nonlinear moments and says, "Here, live this." Maybe that's closer to reality than we think. So here you are, lying in bed watching numbers on your clock tick forward. But the universe might not be ticking at all. It might just be a giant frozen canvas of all events all at once. You floating through it like a needle across a vinyl record, interpreting the groove as melody, one moment at a time. And as you drift closer to sleep, just know, this moment isn't really passing. It's already happened. It's always been happening. And somewhere, somewhen, your dreaming self is already reading the next section, even before you've closed your eyes. Your eyes are closed now, maybe, or halfway there. Either way, you're drifting and your surroundings are starting to soften, but something lingers, some scent in the air. Vanilla from your pillow spray, the faint crispness of summer rain, or just the leftover ghost of dinner. Smell is strange like that. It comes from nowhere and then suddenly, bam, your grandmother's kitchen is right there in your head. Smell isn't just a sense. It's a memory trigger, an emotional time machine, and maybe the most overlooked clue in the illusion of reality. You might think your nose is just there to detect when the milk's gone bad, but it's actually sniffing its way through an invisible molecular world. A silent code of particles floating in from the outside. Technically, every scent you notice is a molecule that's physically entered your nose. So when you smell a rose, microscopic bits of rose are actually bonding with receptors in your olfactory epithelium. Your nose is basically the only sense that directly interacts with the outside world on a chemical level. It's intimate, it's gross, it's kind of romantic, and your brain translates this molecule meets receptor action into floral, woody, or oh God, who microwaved fish. But here, where it gets weird, the same molecule can smell different to different people, or even to you on different days. Depending on your genetics, hormones, health, and even what you've eaten recently, your olfactory receptors fire in different patterns. That freshly cut grass smell you love. It's actually a chemical distress signal released by plants when they're injured. You're literally enjoying the scent of botanical panic. Sleep tight. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians understood the biochemistry of smell, but they certainly understood its power. They used perfumed oils in ritual, medicine, and embalming. Smell wasn't just about pleasure, it was spiritual, sacred, invisible proof of something real. And smell does something the other senses don't. It skips the line. While sound and sight take a detour through your thalamus, the brain's central processing hub, smell goes straight to the limbic system. That's the part responsible for emotion and memory. So when you catch a whiff of sunscreen and suddenly remember a childhood beach trip in Ultra HD clarity, that's not nostalgia. It's neural architecture at work. There's even a name for that vivid experience. The Proustian memory, named after the author Marcel Proust, who wrote about how the smell of a Madeleine cake dipped in tea unlocked a flood of childhood memories. That tiny scent kicked open the door to entire worlds. Your brain's just waiting for the right chemical key. Fringe fact: dogs don't just smell more than we do. They smell in dimensions we can't comprehend. They can detect individual ingredients in a stew just by sniffing. They can smell emotions, illnesses, and even the passage of time through trails of scent particles. It's like if you could see footprints and know how old they were by their color. That's what a dog does with its nose. Now imagine how much of the world you're missing because you're not wired that way. Entire forests of information drifting by your face without notice. Whole chemical conversations between people, plants, animals, going on invisibly. You live inside a fog of molecular signals, and your nose is just barely scraping the surface. But there's a debate in neuroscience that still rages on. How exactly do we smell? One theory says molecules fit into receptors like a key in a lock, shape-based detection. Another, weirder theory, called the vibration theory, suggests that our receptors actually detect the vibrational frequencies of molecules, like tiny biological tuning forks. Some researchers claim this would explain why certain molecules with similar shapes can smell wildly different. Others think it's nonsense. The science isn't settled. Your nose remains a mystery. Then there's the eerie phenomenon of phantom smells, phantasmia. People report detecting smoke, perfume, or rotting odors with no source. These can be caused by sinus infections, seizures, or sometimes no known reason at all. Your brain is just inventing a smell, making it up, building part of your reality out of nothing but misfired signals. And yet it feels just as real as anything your eyes could show you. Your sense of smell also degrades gradually, so slowly in fact that you might not notice it's fading. By your 40s or 50s, you've probably lost a decent chunk of your olfactory range. Not only does this affect how you taste food, because yes, most of what you call flavor is actually smell, but it subtly shifts your emotional landscape. You don't just lose information, you lose access to memory cues, danger alerts, little scent-induced joys. It's like the color slowly draining from your world, one molecule at a time. And still, somehow, smells define your reality more than you realize. New car, old books, morning coffee. Each scent signals a specific mode of life, an emotion, a moment. You've probably walked into a room that smelled like childhood and had no idea why. You couldn't name the notes, but your brain whispered, "You've been here before." Instant déjà vu, no timestamp. There's even research suggesting that smell can predict neurological decline. A diminished ability to identify odors can precede conditions like Alzheimer's. The nose knows, as they say, and sometimes it knows something's wrong before the rest of your brain catches up. That's both terrifying and a little miraculous. But what about dreams? Can you smell in them? People debate this one a lot. Some say no. Others say absolutely yes. Burnt toast, someone's cologne, fresh snow. Scientists believe it's rare but real. And when it does happen, it often comes from memory, not invention. Your dreaming brain may be recycling old scents rather than creating new ones. Even in your sleep, smell is one of the closest ties you have to real experience. So here you are, breathing quietly, surrounded by invisible chemical messengers. Maybe your room smells faintly of laundry detergent, or your skin holds the trace of sunscreen and salt air. Maybe it's just the neutral hush of nighttime. But remember, everything you smell is a tiny molecule entering your body, knocking politely on a neural door and being translated into meaning. It's a whisper from the world, a ghost made of chemistry, and your brain turns it into memory, feeling, identity. You're not just smelling. You're decoding a universe of hidden information. You're being haunted by the past, tickled by the present, and sometimes nudged by something your conscious mind can't quite catch. And if all of this seems a little unbelievable, well, that's the illusion of reality for you. Even your nose is in on it. You open your eyes in the dark and see nothing. Or do you? Your brain insists it's pitch black, but maybe, just maybe, you catch the faintest glint of moonlight, the soft outline of furniture, the ghost of your reflection in the window. It's subtle, but it's there. And yet the moment you reach for it, the details vanish. Welcome to the mess of visual perception, the great con artist of the senses. Your eyes are remarkable organs, tiny biological cameras with layers of optics and wiring, but they're also deeply flawed. You probably think your vision is like a continuous stream, a high-definition video feed of the world around you. But no, it's more like an unreliable slideshow or a flipbook with half the pages missing. And your brain, it's just guessing at the missing pieces. Let's start with the fact that your field of vision has a giant hole in it. Literally. It's called the blind spot, the area on your retina where the optic nerve connects to your eye. No rods, no cones, no data. Every second of your life, there's a donut of emptiness floating in your vision, and your brain just fills it in with what it thinks should be there. Guessing, fabricating, making it up. And you never notice because the illusion is seamless. This isn't just a party trick, it's your default state. Most of your visual experience is a fiction layered over incomplete information. Your peripheral vision, blurry. Your ability to see in the dark, limited. Your capacity to track fast motion, not great, honestly. But your brain, ever the overachiever, polishes it all up and hands it to you like it's fact. Fringe science time. Some researchers have experimented with giving people extra visual input, wearable devices that sense infrared or ultraviolet light and convert them into visible signals. Within weeks, test subjects begin to perceive these new inputs as part of their natural vision. Their brains adopt the alien data as if it's always been there. Reality, it seems, is expandable. Give your brain new information and it builds a new world. Historians still argue whether early cave painters were trying to depict what they saw or what they felt. Those shadowy outlines of animals in flickering torchlight may not be attempts at realism. They might be interpretations, stories, even hallucinations. Because vision isn't a camera, it's a storyteller. It edits. It filters. It lies. Take color constancy, for example. If you're holding a red apple in sunlight, it looks red. Bring it into the shade, it still looks red. But the actual light bouncing off it has changed dramatically. Your brain compensates for lighting conditions so you can recognize objects. But that compensation can also deceive you. That's why two people can see the same image and swear it's different. Yes, we're dragging the dress into this again. Blue and black, don't fight me. And you know those glowing dots you sometimes see in the dark, or the bursts of light when you rub your eyes too hard. Those are entoptic phenomena, visual effects that originate inside your eye. You're seeing the structure of your own biology. Floaters, blood vessels, pressure artifacts. Your brain, desperate to explain, might even turn these into vague shapes or imagined threats. Shadow people, glowing orbs, that weird movement you swore you saw out of the corner of your eye. It's all part of the illusion. And speaking of shadows, let's talk about night vision. Humans are terrible at it. Our eyes contain two main photoreceptor types, rods and cones. Cones handle color and detail, but they need a lot of light. Rods are more sensitive to dim lighting, but they only detect black and white. At night, your cones mostly shut down and your rods take over, meaning you lose color perception. The world fades to grayscale. You become a moody, monochrome film noir character just trying to find the bathroom. And yet, your brain pretends it's still seeing in color. It pulls from memory, context, and expectations. That's the blue towel, you think, even though your eyes aren't sending any blue signals at all. the illusion of color remains. The brain paints over the truth to keep the world familiar. Then there's inattentional blindness, the phenomenon where you completely miss something obvious because your focus is elsewhere. Ever heard of the invisible gorilla? In a famous psychology experiment, participants watch a video of people passing basketballs and are told to count the passes. Most completely fail to notice a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the scene. Their eyes see it, but their brains don't process it. If something isn't relevant to the task at hand, your brain throws it out, erased, as if it never existed. And yes, this happens all the time in daily life. You think you saw everything in a room. You didn't. You saw what you expected to see. Your brain filters so aggressively that you miss entire objects, people, and events. Reality becomes a curated feed. It's the algorithm inside your skull. There's also change blindness, a close cousin to inattentional blindness. If you see two nearly identical images with a small difference between them, say a missing lamp, your brain often won't notice the change unless it's pointed out. Even large alterations can go undetected. You think you're seeing a static, stable world. You're not. It's changing constantly, and you're not even noticing. Now dreams. That's a visual trip all on its own. You can see entire landscapes, faces, symbols, but your eyes are closed. The brain generates all of it internally. Some people even experience lucid dreams, where they know they're dreaming and can control the scenery. In those moments, they build entire visual worlds from memory, imagination, and emotion. It's proof that the brain doesn't need external input to produce a visual reality. It can generate one from scratch. And what about visual hallucinations? They can occur during sleep deprivation, stress, migraines, or certain neurological conditions. These aren't daydreams, they're perceived as real. Your eyes report something that doesn't exist and your brain believes it. A figure at the end of the hallway, a flash of movement in your mirror, a face in the ceiling texture. Your mind creates the monster and then jumps at it. You're not crazy. You're just operating on faulty hardware, glitchy software, overclocked pattern recognition. All of this points to one unsettling conclusion. You are not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing an interpretation, curated, filtered, stitched together from light, memory, and expectation. Reality through the lens of illusion. Truth smudged with guesses. So when you open your eyes in the dark and you think you see something shift, don't panic. It was probably nothing. Or maybe it was your brain trying to warn you that the image you trust most, your vision, is the one that lies best. And honestly, it's been lying to you since the day you were born. You wake up inside a dream. You know the feeling. Maybe you're in your childhood home, but the walls are the wrong color. Your dog is talking. Gravity is optional. For a moment, everything makes sense until it doesn't. And then you wake up, unless you were already awake, unless this is the dream, and that was the real thing, and now you're tumbling through layers of maybe like a mental lasagna. Dreams and waking life are separated by surprisingly little, and when it comes to how your brain processes them, the boundaries get so fuzzy they practically melt. You spend roughly a third of your life asleep, and a solid portion of that time dreaming, wandering through strange, elastic worlds that feel absolutely real while they're happening. But here's the kicker. When scientists scan your brain during vivid dreams, the patterns look nearly identical to those in waking perception. The brain's like, cool, another reality. Let's render it in full HD. Your brain doesn't seem to care whether the input comes from the outside world or from within. The experience of dreaming and the experience of living both use the same circuits: visual processing, emotional responses, even language. That's why dream emotions can hit just as hard. You wake up genuinely sad or in love or terrified because the feeling was real, even if the plot was nonsense. Historians still argue whether dreams were once considered more real than waking life. In ancient Mesopotamia, dreams were divine messages. In some indigenous traditions, they're journeys to other realms. Even in classical Greece, philosophers like Heraclitus and Aristotle wondered whether sleep was a kind of soul travel. Fast forward to Freud, and dreams became windows into the subconscious, a tangled theater of desire, memory, and unresolved tension. Whatever the interpretation, one truth remains: dreams feel real, and your brain goes along for the ride. One fringe theory. Some philosophers and physicists suggest that consciousness may be a type of dream, a structured, persistent hallucination with rules and feedback loops. In that sense, dreams aren't the weird part. They're just a looser version of what you're already doing, constructing a reality from scratch. Ever had a false awakening? That's when you dream that you've woken up, gone through your morning routine, made coffee, brushed your teeth, only to realize you're still dreaming, sometimes multiple times in a row. It's like being trapped in a simulation that's pretending to be real life. Your brain is mimicking consciousness so well that even the illusion includes other illusions. That's not just creepy, it's impressive. Dreams also mess with time. You can experience hours, even entire lifetimes, in a dream that lasts only a few real-world minutes. Studies show that dream time tends to sync loosely with actual time, meaning that if you're dreaming for 10 minutes, your dream might also feel like 10 minutes. But the content can compress or stretch depending on how your brain edits the narrative. One moment you're walking to school, the next you're 97 years old and being knighted by a walrus. Oh, and here's a fun tidbit. You can't always read in dreams. Written words tend to change or blur when you look at them twice. That's because the language centers of your brain aren't as active during REM sleep. Some lucid dreamers use this as a reality check. Try reading a sentence twice. If the words change or don't make sense, you're probably dreaming. Unless, of course, you're just really tired. Speaking of lucid dreams, they're one of the only ways to become consciously aware inside the simulation. Roughly 55% of people have experienced at least one lucid dream, and around 23% report having them regularly. In this state, you realize you're dreaming and can sometimes control the dream's content. Want to fly? Just think about it. Want to confront your fears or talk to a dream version of someone you miss? You can. You are the architect and the protagonist. Lucid dreaming has been used in therapy, creativity, and even scientific research. In some studies, lucid dreamers were able to communicate with researchers in real time using eye movements and facial twitches. Yes, from inside the dream. Like Morse code through the veil of sleep. If that doesn't shake your definition of real, I don't know what will. And then there are hypnagogic hallucinations, the vivid images and sounds that occur as you're falling asleep. Ever hear someone call your name just before you drift off? Or see flashes of light or strange faces? That's your brain transitioning into dream mode, flipping through its mental slide projector. On the flip side, hypnopompic hallucinations happen as you're waking. These states blur the line between dream and waking life so effectively that you often don't realize you've left one and entered the other. Sleep paralysis lives here too, the deeply unsettling phenomenon where your mind wakes up but your body doesn't. You become aware but unable to move. And sometimes you see things, figures in the room, pressure on your chest, footsteps, shadows. Historically, these experiences were attributed to demons, spirits, or alien abductions. Today, we understand them as a mix of REM atonia, the paralysis that prevents you from acting out dreams, and dream elements leaking into wakefulness. Still terrifying though, because again, your brain doesn't care where the information comes from. If it seems real, it is real. Some fringe researchers even speculate that dreams may allow consciousness to access alternate dimensions, parallel selves, or fragments of shared memory across time. While there's no evidence for this, it speaks to the sheer power of dreaming, how utterly real it can feel, and how little difference your brain seems to make between dreaming and waking. What does this mean for you, curled up in bed, eyes fluttering under the skin of your eyelids? It means that your entire experience of reality, sight, sound, memory, identity, can be reproduced by your brain without any external input. Dreams are proof that your mind can fabricate a world that feels as convincing as the one you're living in now. So when you wake up in the morning and say, "That was just a dream," pause for a moment. What makes this one any different? The answer, mostly continuity. Waking life is more consistent. Gravity behaves. People don't morph into squirrels mid-sentence, but even that's a thin defense. Because dreams don't follow different physics, they just follow a different logic. They're still generated by your brain, just without the same filters. So here's the strange truth. The boundary between dreaming and waking isn't a wall. It's a shimmer, a soft curtain, and sometimes you don't know you've crossed it until it's too late, or until you're halfway through your morning toast and realize you never got out of bed. And now let's bend our ear to sound, that sneaky, invisible sculptor of your experience. You think of sound as something you hear, like music or voices or that suspicious thud in the hallway you're currently choosing to ignore. But sound isn't a thing. It's a disturbance, a wobble, a pressure wave that slithers through air molecules until it crashes into your eardrums and makes your brain say, "Ah, yes, jazz." So let's get this straight. Sound is not floating out there in the world like a fog of music notes and podcast episodes. Without a brain to decode the waves, there is no sound. There's only vibration, air molecules bumping into each other, waves of compression and expansion. Imagine shaking a slinky back and forth down a hallway. That's basically what your ears are doing, constantly picking up the ripples of invisible chaos. Your outer ear, the part that wiggles, is just a fleshy satellite dish, scooping up those waves and funneling them inward. From there, it's all mechanical magic. The eardrum vibrates, the middle ear bones amplify the motion, and your inner ear, specifically the cochlea, turns that movement into electrical signals. The brain takes those signals and decides, that's a violin. That's my friend's laugh. That's an oncoming train. The sound itself doesn't exist until your brain says it does. Fringe science side note: some people see sound thanks to a rare form of synesthesia. When they hear music, they also perceive bursts of color or shapes. Others feel sound as physical pressure, sometimes even pain due to a sensitivity called hyperacusis. So sound isn't one size fits all. Your experience of it is sculpted by biology, emotion, memory, and maybe even genetics. That lo-fi beat you fall asleep to might be soothing for you and excruciating to someone else. Historians still argue whether the earliest humans used sound more for language or for ritual. Was that ancient drumbeat meant to signal danger or summon a storm? Either way, we know that sound has always been sacred. Chanting, bells, war cries, lullabies. The first technology wasn't fire, it was voice. And your voice, by the way, is its own weird illusion. When you speak, you're hearing yourself from two sources: the air-transmitted sound that reaches your ears and the bone-conducted vibrations that travel directly through your skull. That's why when you hear a recording of your voice, it sounds alien. It's your voice, minus the skull echo. You're hearing yourself the way everyone else hears you, and your brain panics a little. Who is this nasally stranger impersonating me? Let's not even get into auto-tune. Okay, let's get into it. Auto-tune isn't just a pitch correction tool, it's a reality-bending filter. It changes the natural vibrational patterns of human speech and singing into mathematically perfect tones. And your brain, it doesn't always mind. In fact, some people find the robotic shimmer of auto-tuned vocals comforting, clean, predictable, almost more real than real. But the real kicker here is that your brain fills in missing sound too. Ever heard the phantom ringtone? You swear your phone vibrated or made a sound, but it didn't. Or you hear someone call your name in a noisy room only to find no one there. Your brain is so good at pattern recognition, it will sometimes hallucinate sound to complete an expected narrative. That creaky floorboard at midnight could be your pipes, could be a ghost, could be your brain being a little too enthusiastic. Speaking of which, have you ever noticed how silence can feel loud? That's because pure silence, real silence, doesn't exist. Even in the quietest room, you hear your blood, your breath, the tiny hiss of your auditory system itself. In fact, the anechoic chamber, the most silent room on Earth, drives some people to panic. With no ambient noise to anchor you, your brain starts turning up the gain. You might hear your heartbeat pounding, your joints creaking, even the subtle shifting of your muscles. Some people report hallucinations after a few minutes. Total silence, it turns out, is deeply unnatural. And your ears don't just passively receive sound, they anticipate it. Musicians, for example, often hear the next note before they play it. This is thanks to a phenomenon called predictive coding, your brain's habit of guessing what's coming next and filling it in if it doesn't arrive. That's why jump scares work. Your brain builds a rhythm of expectation, and when the pattern breaks, it freaks out. Thanks, horror movies. Sound can also manipulate your emotions without your permission. Low frequencies make you uneasy. They've been used in film scores to create tension for decades. There's even a term, infrasound, vibrations below the level of human hearing that can still affect your mood, trigger fear responses, or make you feel like you're being watched. Some ghost sightings, especially in old buildings with ancient air vents, have been blamed on infrasound. You don't hear anything, but your body responds as if something terrible is near. Sound as invisible menace. Dreams do sound, too, strangely well, in fact. You've probably heard voices in dreams that weren't yours, music you didn't know you knew, entire conversations that your brain constructed out of thin air. No headphones, no external noise, just your internal narrator adding audio to the theater of sleep. There are even cases of people hearing music in dreams and later composing it in waking life. Paul McCartney claimed Yesterday came to him in a dream, and we can't really argue with that. And then there are auditory hallucinations. Not the terrifying ones always dramatized in movies, but the subtle kind. A voice in the shower that turns out to be running water. A song playing faintly at the edge of your hearing that isn't there. Your brain, ever the overachiever, trying to extract meaning from white noise. Fill in the blanks. Pretend it makes sense. Your experience of sound is not a passive reflection of the world. It's an ongoing collaboration between your senses and your expectations. When you hear something familiar, your brain fills in the details it assumes should be there. When you hear something unfamiliar, it often reshapes it into something that feels familiar. Comfort first, accuracy later. And finally, let's return to you in bed. listening to this quiet voice guide you through invisible truths. You're hearing my words through a speaker or headphones, but really, you're reconstructing them in your mind. My voice is gone before it arrives, and what's left is the echo inside your perception. Every syllable is just air pressure translated into meaning. Every pause is your mind reaching into silence and sculpting significance. So the next time you hear something, anything, ask yourself, is it real? Is it there? Or is your brain just composing a soundtrack, remixing the universe one pressure wave at a time? And if you listen closely enough, you might even hear yourself falling asleep. Now let's talk about touch, that oh so reassuring sense that tells you the bed is soft, the blanket is warm, and the cat on your feet is, unfortunately, heavier than she looks. Touch makes the world feel real, tangible, unmistakable. But what if I told you that even this most solid of sensations is a beautifully constructed illusion? Right now, your fingers are probably resting on something, a pillow, a phone, a sheet, and it feels like contact. But let's get this out of the way: you never actually touch anything, not in the literal sense. What you perceive as touch is the repulsion of electromagnetic forces. The electrons in your skin are pushing against the electrons in the object, and your nerves are screaming, "We're touching something." But on the atomic level, there's still a gap. An invisible force field keeping everything just barely apart. Your sense of touch is less about physical contact and more about detection of resistance, pressure, vibration, temperature. Your skin, the body's largest organ, is filled with a network of receptors, each type tuned to different stimuli. Some pick up sharp pain. Others detect warmth, stretch, or the subtle drag of fabric across your forearm. Your brain weaves this input into a map of reality. This is you. This is not you. This is cozy. That is a cactus. Avoid. Historians still argue whether ancient Chinese medicine, with its mapping of pressure points and meridians, intuited a form of this nervous system long before Western science caught up. They may not have known about synapses and ion channels, but they understood that pressure on one part of the body could echo in another. The map may not be perfect, but it's eerily familiar. The illusion deepens when you consider phantom limb syndrome. This occurs when someone loses a limb, say, a leg, but continues to feel it. They might feel pain, tingling, or the urge to move toes that no longer exist. Their brain still contains the neural blueprint for the missing part, and it keeps trying to include it in the body map. Touch, it turns out, is as much about belief as it is about sensation. Then there's the rubber hand illusion, which you may remember from earlier. A person's real hand is hidden while a fake rubber hand is stroked in perfect sync. After a while, the brain accepts the rubber hand as part of the body. If you hurt the fake hand, the person flinches. Touch is being tricked. Ownership is being rewritten. Reality is updating in real time. Or consider mirror therapy used for phantom limb pain. A mirror reflects a healthy limb so it looks like the missing one is still there. Patients perform movements while watching the reflection, and the brain, so desperate for coherence, often relieves the pain. Nothing is really happening, but the illusion heals. Your skin can also hallucinate. Ever had the feeling something's crawling on you when it is? That's called formication, and it can happen from fatigue, anxiety, or even spicy food. Your brain misfires a signal, and suddenly you're brushing away invisible bugs. Not exactly a spa treatment. And pain. Pain is not just a signal, it's a negotiation. Two people can experience the same physical injury and report wildly different pain levels. Your perception of pain is shaped by expectation, attention, emotion, and context. Athletes often play through injuries they don't notice until later. Soldiers report feeling no pain from serious wounds during combat. Your brain edits discomfort based on whether it thinks survival depends on ignoring it. Some people are born with congenital insensitivity to pain, meaning they don't feel it at all. Sounds like a superpower until you realize that pain is your body's emergency alert system. Without it, you don't know when you're injured, and minor problems become serious fast. Pain is unpleasant, yes, but also one of the ways your body ensures you stay alive long enough to complain about it. On the other end of the spectrum are conditions like allodynia, where even light touch causes intense pain. A breeze, a blanket, a friendly pat on the shoulder, any of these can trigger agony. In these cases, the brain has turned up the sensitivity dial way too high. There's no physical cause. The pain is real, but the source isn't where you'd expect it. Touch is also shaped by emotion. The same hand on your back can feel comforting or creepy depending on who it belongs to. Context is everything. Your body doesn't process touch in isolation. It blends it with memory, social cues, and trust. That's why a hug can release oxytocin, the so-called cuddle hormone, or trigger a fight or flight response. Same skin, different interpretation. Fringe detail. Some people report out-of-body touch, particularly during sleep paralysis. They feel hands on them, pressure on the chest, even hair being stroked, while being fully unable to move. These sensations, though often terrifying, occur without any external contact. The brain is simulating touch from nothing. It's building a tactile hallucination, complete with fear and narrative. Even dreams get in on the act. You might feel water splash you in a dream or the weight of an object in your hand. These sensations, entirely self-generated, are often vivid enough to cause a physical reaction. You might twitch, recoil, or even wake up sweating. No contact occurred, but your brain said, "This is real," and your body obeyed. Touch also has a social architecture. Cultures differ wildly on what's appropriate. Some societies greet with hugs and cheek kisses. Others bow. Some find casual touch comforting. Others find it invasive. What your skin interprets as welcome or threatening is filtered through your entire social upbringing. Reality, once again, is bent to the context. And yet, despite its illusions, touch grounds you. It's the first sense to develop in the womb. It's the one that stays with you through sleep, distraction, even blindness. You might lose your sight, your hearing, even your memory. But your skin still sings when the wind hits just right, or when someone you love holds your hand. Right now, lying there, you can feel the pressure of gravity pulling you down into your mattress, the warmth of your blanket, maybe a soft pillow under your head or the brush of fabric against your wrist. These sensations feel realer than real. They root you, but they're also filtered, interpreted, edited. Your brain decides which signals to notice and which to mute. You don't feel your shirt constantly, do you? That's not because it stopped touching you. It's because your brain decided it wasn't interesting enough to mention anymore. So touch, that most intimate of senses, is just another layer in the illusion. A beautifully convincing one that lets you hold, rest, build, and connect, but still an illusion, constructed, filtered, fictional, and yet essential. Because when the world feels unreal, when vision blurs and sound deceives, when time bends and memories glitch, sometimes it's touch that brings you back. The softness of a pillow, the solid edge of a door frame, the reassuring press of your own hand over your heart. Even if you're not really touching anything at all. By now, your fingers are probably wrapped in blankets, your body humming with sleep. You've learned your touch isn't real. Your eyes lie. Your ears remix the world. And yet it all feels real, right? The floor still squeaks. The bed still cradles you. But tonight, let's peel back the wallpaper on one of the biggest questions in modern physics. Is space even real? As in the room around you, the three-dimensional stage you walk, drive, and dance through, the sky above, the ground below, that entire sense of being somewhere. Is it actually there? Or is it a kind of simulated interface? Because yes, some physicists are seriously considering the possibility that space is a hologram. Let's rewind a bit. You were taught that the universe has three spatial dimensions: length, width, height, and one time dimension. That's what we move through, right? But in the 1970s and 1980s, physicists started bumping into a paradox. If you cram too much information into a region of space, you hit a limit. And that limit doesn't scale with volume. It scales with surface area. What does that mean? Well, imagine cramming books into a bookshelf. Normally, you'd think the capacity depends on how deep the shelf is. But this theory says nope. It only depends on how wide and tall the shelf is. Weird, right? This leads to something called the holographic principle, which suggests that all the information in a 3D volume of space can be described on its 2D boundary. It's like the universe is a giant cosmic DVD. The real data is stored on the surface, but what you experience feels three-dimensional, just like how a hologram on your credit card seems to have depth, but doesn't. Fringe detail. The physicist Juan Maldacena proposed a version of this in the 1990s called the AD-SCFT correspondence, a mathematical model that showed how a universe with gravity could be equivalent to a universe without gravity, sitting on the boundary of that space. Basically, the reality inside could be fully described by the math living on the edge. So, are we living in a cosmic projection? Historians still argue whether Plato's famous allegory of the cave was humanity's first hologram hypothesis. He imagined people chained in a cave, seeing only shadows projected on a wall. The real world was outside, but they had no access to it. Sound familiar? Let's not confuse this with the "we're in a computer simulation" idea, although it's in the same existential neighborhood. The holographic principle doesn't necessarily mean we're fake, just that what we experience as three dimensions might emerge from something else. Some physicists think space itself isn't fundamental. It might emerge from information, the arrangement and relationship between quantum bits or qubits. And this gets even more brain-bending when you throw quantum entanglement into the mix. That's when two particles become so linked that measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. Einstein hated it. He called it spooky action at a distance. But experiments keep proving it's real. If particles can influence each other with no apparent path between them, maybe space isn't the grid we think it is. Maybe it's not a container, but a product of the relationships between things. Let's go even further off the cliff. Some researchers suggest that space and time aren't fundamental at all, that they emerge from something deeper, like the way a ripple emerges from water. You see the ripple, but it's not a thing. It's the behavior of the water beneath it. What if space is just the behavior of the underlying quantum fields? What if here and there are constructs, tools your brain uses to make sense of data? Which brings us to your perception. Your mind treats space like an app interface. You see a chair across the room. You feel your body beneath the sheets. You trust the spatial relationships are real, but they might be no more real than the folders on your computer desktop. Those little icons aren't real folders. They're visual metaphors to help you interact with complex systems. Your brain's version of space might be doing the same thing, giving you metaphors that allow interaction, not access to the underlying truth. There's even a growing theory in neuroscience that consciousness constructs space, not the other way around. Instead of space being the arena where consciousness arises, perhaps it's your brain that generates the illusion of space to organize sensory data. After all, if dreams can fabricate entire 3D landscapes in your mind while you sleep, what's stopping your waking brain from doing the same? And yes, dreams prove how malleable space is. In dream logic, you can teleport across countries, open doors to impossible places, walk through walls. The physical laws are suspended, yet your dream brain just shrugs and goes, "Yep, checks out." Your sense of location adjusts effortlessly to every bizarre turn. You don't need consistency, you need meaning. Even in waking life, space is inconsistent. Ever walk into a familiar room and feel like something's off? Like the distance is wrong? That's your spatial memory conflicting with real-time perception. Or have you ever traveled somewhere new and felt like it took forever to get there, but the return trip flew by? That's not time playing tricks, it's your brain recalibrating spatial familiarity. Distance is psychological. Location is relative. You are a map that redraws itself constantly. Now let's not forget your vestibular system, the inner ear mechanism that helps you detect orientation and balance. It tells you when you're upright, spinning, or falling. When it glitches, space collapses. You feel like the room is spinning. You lose your sense of up and down. This system has nothing to do with sight. It's pure body sense. And when it malfunctions, your idea of where crumbles instantly. Ever get that weird, floaty feeling before falling asleep, where your limbs seem to drift or swell or vanish? That's your body letting go of its spatial anchors. Your proprioception body position awareness is dialing down. Your consciousness is untethering. And still, your mind builds a dream world with walls and ceilings and stairs, because it needs space to navigate, even if it has to invent it. So right now, as you lie still in a dark room, your mind tells you you're here. But where is here? Is it a location on a map, a point in space, or just a convenient placeholder in a self-generated illusion? Because if physicists are right and space is just a holographic projection based on quantum data, then this room isn't real. The walls aren't real. Even the floor under you is a beautifully rendered metaphor, a necessary lie. A user interface so convincing, you stopped questioning it after age 4. But you're questioning it now, aren't you? Just know this: even if space is an illusion, it's a useful one. It helps you navigate, relate, and survive. Your brain may be rendering this scene in low-res shortcuts and convenient constructs, but it's still doing its best to give you a world you can understand. And tonight, that world includes a bed, a blanket, and the feeling of being somewhere safe. Whether or not that somewhere is real. Let's go ahead and fall off the edge now, off the edge of certainty, of sanity, of classical physics. Because if space and time are already feeling flimsy, wait until you get a load of quantum reality. Spoiler alert, it doesn't care about your common sense. It doesn't follow the rules. And it might not even exist until you look at it. Yes, you've officially entered the realm where things can be in two places at once, where observing something changes what it is, and where particles sometimes behave like waves, or vice versa, just to mess with you. Let's begin with the infamous double-slit experiment, a cornerstone of quantum physics and possibly the universe's favorite prank. Picture this. You fire single particles, electrons, photons, pick your quantum flavor, at a barrier with two narrow slits. Behind that is a detector screen. If particles were just little balls, you'd expect two distinct lines to appear where they passed through the slits. But nope. You get an interference pattern, like you would with waves. The kind of thing you see when ripples in a pond overlap. It's as if each particle is interfering with itself. Now here's the brain melter. If you place a detector to see which slit the particle goes through, just to check, the interference pattern disappears. The particle chooses one slit or the other. The wave-like behavior vanishes. It acts like a tidy little marble instead. In other words, the act of observing changes the outcome. Historians still argue whether Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg meant this literally. Does the observer's consciousness collapse the wave function? Or whether observation is just interaction with a measuring device, regardless of mind? Either way, the result is undeniable. Reality behaves differently when you look at it. This leads to the idea of quantum superposition. A particle doesn't exist in one place or another. It exists in all possible states at once until measured. This is where Schrödinger's cat stumbles into the conversation. You've heard this one, cat in a sealed box linked to a quantum event. Until you look inside, the cat is both alive and dead, its state undefined, smeared across probabilities. Only when you observe do you get a clear result. Poor cat. Infinite trauma. But it's not just theoretical cats being messed with. Real particles do this. Actual electrons behave this way. And experiments have confirmed that even relatively large molecules can exist in quantum superposition. Meaning, the line between quantum weirdness and our world might be thinner than we'd like. Fringe detail. Some researchers believe that your brain itself, your neurons, your consciousness, might operate on quantum principles. This is highly controversial, but the idea, called Orchard theory, orchestrated objective reduction, suggests that microtubules inside brain cells might support quantum-level processes. If true, that could mean your thoughts and awareness arise from probabilities collapsing into experience. In other words, you might not fully exist until you observe yourself. Let's add some extra seasoning with quantum entanglement, which you met earlier. When two particles become entangled, their states are linked, so that measuring one instantly determines the state of the other, even if they're light years apart. It's like they're connected outside of space and time. Einstein hated this. He called it spooky action at a distance because it appeared to violate the universal speed limit. Nothing should travel faster than light. But again, the experiments say otherwise. The entanglement works. It just doesn't let you send usable information faster than light, so the universe still gets to keep its modesty. So what does this mean for reality? It means that the universe at its most fundamental level is not made of solid stuff, but of probabilities, clouds of maybe, equations of uncertainty. Until something interacts, until something is measured, nothing is fixed. This is the essence of the Copenhagen interpretation. The idea that particles don't have definite properties until observed. Reality is fundamentally indeterminate. Your desk, your pillow, your left foot. According to this view, they're the sum total of all the measurements and interactions that have ever occurred to them. A history of collapsed possibilities. But not everyone agrees. There's also the many worlds interpretation, which says the wave function never collapses. Instead, every possible outcome happens in parallel universes. Look at a particle and you don't collapse it into one state. You split into two universes, one where the particle went left and one where it went right. One where the cat lives and one where you're cleaning up fur and regret. Every quantum decision branches reality like a cosmic choose your own adventure. Fringe, absolutely, but also mathematically consistent and disturbingly elegant. You might be lying in bed right now in this world, but another version of you already fell asleep. One got up for a snack. One never clicked on this video. One became a quantum physicist and is shouting at me through the fabric of space-time, muttering, "Not this interpretation again." And then there's quantum decoherence, a process by which quantum systems lose their weirdness when they interact with the environment. This helps explain why you don't see chairs in sewer position or cats blinking between states. The universe is constantly collapsing itself into classical behavior through interactions. Reality becomes normal through sheer exposure. Still, this doesn't explain why measurement causes collapse, if it even does. Is the act of observing truly special? Or are we just clumsy apes poking at a mystery too big to fit in our heads? Dreams don't escape this either. There's something very quantum about dreams, how they shift instantly from one setting to another, how people and places merge, how cause and effect break down. You're not confined by continuity. You exist in overlapping, uncertain states. And yet, inside the dream, it feels perfectly natural. Sewer position in pajamas. So here you are trying to fall asleep and the universe is laughing, because it doesn't even know what it is until you poke it. Particles don't settle. Objects don't commit. Everything is half-baked until you open the oven of observation and say, "Ah, there it is." And maybe the deepest trick of all is that you are both observer and observed. Your conscious awareness might be the only thing giving this moment shape. You see the walls. You feel the air. You know the sound of your own breath. But none of it may be solid until your mind turns its flashlight on it and says, "This is real." Right. Right. You're lying there quietly now, somewhere between alertness and dreams, and you feel like you're making a choice. To listen, to keep your eyes closed, to relax a little deeper. But let's stop and ask a dangerous question, the kind you usually skip when you're trying to fall asleep. Did you really choose that? Free will. It's the crown jewel of human experience. The feeling that you decide what to do, that you can choose coffee or tea, wake or sleep, open the fridge or don't. But what if that feeling is just that, a feeling? What if the machinery of your mind already made the decision before you were even aware of it? Let's start with a famous experiment. In the 1980s, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet asked participants to perform a simple task, move their finger whenever they felt like it. But here, where it got weird, using EEG to monitor brain activity, Libet discovered that the motor cortex lit up hundreds of milliseconds before the participants consciously decided to move. The brain made the choice before the person felt like they had chosen. Historians still argue whether this undermines free will entirely or just shows a delay in consciousness. Libet himself walked a fine line, suggesting that we might not initiate actions freely, but we can veto them at the last second, what he called free won't. In other words, you may not choose to have the impulse, but you can still choose not to act on it. Fringe side note: some recent studies with more precise timing suggest this unconscious buildup can begin up to 7 seconds before a conscious decision. That's not comforting. That's your brain preloading your behavior like it's buffering a YouTube video. By the time you show up, the scene's already halfway through. And yet you feel so in control. Every time you pick up your phone, scroll through a feed, or decide to eat another chip, you feel like you're driving. But maybe you're just the passenger, the narrator, the PR department catching up to decisions that were made backstage. Your brain is made of neurons. Neurons fire based on inputs, chemistry, environment, memory, and yes, randomness. There's no little homunculus, no inner you sitting at the control panel. It's all electrochemical fireworks. And if those fireworks light up in a certain sequence, you stand up and make tea. If they don't, you stay in bed. Where? The you in that. Some philosophers, like Daniel Dennett, argue that free will still exists, just not in the mystical, absolute sense we crave. Instead, it emerges from layers of complexity, feedback loops, learned behavior, conscious reflection. You might not have total freedom, but you have agency, a structured space in which decisions happen, influenced by reason and experience. Others, like Sam Harris, say nope. Free will is an illusion. Every thought you have, every feeling, every desire arises from causes you didn't choose. You didn't pick your genetics. You didn't choose your childhood. You didn't write the code that runs in your skull. You are the result, not the author. Consider this. If you rewind your life to the exact same circumstances, same biology, same mood, same surroundings, could you really choose differently? Or would you just do the same thing again because nothing inside you had changed? This isn't just theoretical, it's happening every day. You go to the grocery store and think you chose the cereal on the shelf, but its placement, packaging, past advertising, and your blood sugar level all played a role. You decided, sure, but only after your environment nudged you gently in that direction. You're not choosing in a vacuum. You're choosing inside a system. And your system is full of glitches. Take choice blindness. In some experiments, people were shown two faces and asked to choose which one they found more attractive. After making their choice, they were shown the other face and asked to explain why they picked it. And without noticing the switch, many participants offered detailed justifications for a decision they didn't make. Their brain rewrote history, complete with confident commentary. Free will meets storytelling instinct. Your emotions also hijack decisions constantly. Studies show that judges are more likely to grant parole right after lunch. Shoppers are more generous when the store smells like citrus. Voters can be influenced by the order of names on a ballot. You're being shaped, nudged, tilted, and most of the time you don't notice. Even your dreams reflect this lack of control. You can't always choose what to dream about. You don't decide who shows up or how the story unfolds. Sometimes you're running in circles. Sometimes you're having lunch with a historical figure and your ex. But even in dreams, you often feel like you're making choices. I walked through the door. I picked up the phone. But who decided? Was it you? Or your sleeping neural soup generating action on autopilot? Still, something inside you feels free. You can resist an impulse. You can reflect. You can regret. And that, some argue, is enough. Philosophers call this compatibilism, the belief that free will and determinism can coexist. Maybe your choices are caused, but they're still yours because they reflect your values, your memories, your sense of self. It's not about absolute freedom. It's about meaningful participation in your own narrative. And maybe that's all you need. Even if your choices are constrained by genes, mood, or quantum randomness, they still flow through you. Your brain is the filter, the interpreter, the storyteller. It may not have full authorship, but it crafts the arc. It builds the why. You can choose to pause before speaking. You can choose to reframe a thought. You can choose to keep listening, or drift off, or replay this whole thing tomorrow because you fell asleep 3 sections ago and just now woke up with a headphone imprint on your cheek. That choice, that little micro moment of awareness, might be as close to freedom as any of us get. And it's enough. So here you are, staring down the illusion of control, the myth of free will, and still, you feel present. You feel the rhythm of your breath. You feel the possibility of the next moment. Maybe that's where your freedom lives. Not in choosing everything, but in choosing how you show up for what's already unfolding. And if that's a lie, well, it's one you've believed every day of your life. Might as well believe it beautifully. You trust your memory, don't you? Not always, maybe. Sure, you've forgotten a password or two, but on the whole, you believe that what you remember really happened. Your fifth birthday party, that embarrassing thing you said in seventh grade where you parked the car yesterday. But here's the quiet truth hiding under your pillow tonight. Your memory is a story, and stories can lie. Right now, you think you're lying in the same body that existed 10 years ago. Same person, same life, a little older, but much of what you remember about that decade. You're not replaying it like a video. You're rebuilding it from scratch. Each time you recall something, your brain pulls the pieces from different storage areas, visual, emotional, auditory, and assembles them like a puzzle. But it's not perfect. It's never perfect. It's more like photocopying a photocopy, a little blurrier every time. Here, the unsettling part. When you recall a memory, your brain opens it up for editing. Whatever you're feeling at the time, your mood, your expectations, even background distractions, can subtly rewrite it. Then your brain saves the edited version, thinking it's the original. That moment you remember vividly from childhood. It might be more reconstruction than record. Historians still argue whether the earliest historians, looking at you, Herodotus, were trying to document facts or just tell a good story. Because even then, humans were better at narrative than accuracy. We crave meaning more than precision. And your memory, it's shaped by that same instinct. Let's take a quick walk into the science of false memories. In one experiment, researchers gave participants a list of words related to a theme, say, sleep, bed, rest, pillow. Later, many swore they also saw the word dream, even though it wasn't on the list. That, called the Diess-Roediger-McDermott paradigm. But you can just call it proof that your brain loves to assume. You're not remembering what happened. You're remembering the gist, and sometimes filling in the gaps with imagination. Ever visited a place you hadn't been in years and thought, wow, this is smaller than I remember? That's not the place shrinking. That's your mind exaggerating scale from childhood memory. You encoded the feeling of enormity, not the measurements. And that feeling never got updated. Your brain was too busy mythologizing the monkey bars. Then there are implanted memories. Memories that feel absolutely real but were suggested by someone else. In one study, participants were told a detailed story about being lost in a mall as a child. It never happened, but after a few days, many began recalling the event vividly, even adding new details. Your brain will build a memory just to make the story make sense, like a screenwriter under pressure. And what about flashbulb memories, those ultra-vivid snapshots during dramatic events? People often describe remembering exactly where they were when something big happened. But studies show those memories degrade just like the rest. The confidence remains. The accuracy does not. You think you're watching a replay. You're watching a reenactment. Fringe science fact. There's emerging evidence that people with highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM, don't necessarily remember more accurately. They just remember more. And they're not immune to false memories either. Even the most detailed brains get creative under pressure. So if memory is so unreliable, how do you build a sense of self? Simple. You don't notice the edits. Your brain connects the dots into a continuous you, a narrative self with chapters and turning points. And even if the scenes are blurry or incorrect, the feeling of continuity remains. It's a brilliant illusion, cohesive, comforting, entirely stitched together. Ever remember a conversation differently than someone else? You both swear you're right. You're probably not, but neither is the other person. You each stored an edited version of what happened, colored by your emotions and your goals. Memory isn't a court transcript. It's a creative interpretation, with heavy bias and a deeply unreliable narrator. Dreams get tangled in here too. You may have a vivid dream and file it away like a memory. Later, you remember it as something that happened. This is especially common in early childhood. Some adults even retain dream memories into their adult life, swearing up and down that something occurred, only to later discover it couldn't have. The brain doesn't care. It tagged the memory important, and that's enough. Your body even stores memory in strange ways. Certain smells can transport you. Certain songs hit you like a time machine. This isn't magic. It's just sensory detail layered over emotional encoding. Your brain saves what's relevant, not what's real, which is why you remember a breakup song more clearly than your grandmother's phone number. And don't forget trauma, an especially unreliable narrator. Traumatic memories can be suppressed, fragmented, distorted, or exaggerated. You might remember the moment after an accident with vivid clarity, but the moment before is gone forever. Some memories feel clear because they were emotionally intense, but intensity isn't accuracy. It's just stickiness. There's also something called source amnesia. You remember the fact, but not where you learned it. Was it a dream, a friend, a movie? Did it happen to you, or did you just hear about it so many times that your brain filed it as your own? Once that source tag falls off, your brain just shrugs and says, probably real. So right now, as you lie in the dark, listening to this voice weave its way through your mental filing cabinets, remember this. Most of what you think of as your past is a beautifully written novel. And like any novel, it changes in the telling. A memory isn't a place you visit. It's a story you tell yourself. And sometimes you get the details wrong on purpose. But here, the comforting twist. Even if your memories are imperfect, they're yours. They shaped you. Whether they happened exactly that way or not, they guided your choices, your values, your self-perception. The story matters more than the footage. And even now, you're making new memories. This moment, this breath, this quiet. Will you remember it tomorrow? Maybe, maybe not, but your brain will record something. A feeling, a rhythm, a sense of stillness. And now it's time to soften the pace. Let's enter the wind down. Your thoughts are quieter now, slower. Your breathing is gentle. The air around you feels still, like it's holding its breath, just waiting for you to drift. Nothing here is urgent. There is no decision to make, no perfect memory to hold on to. There's just this space, this body, this fragile, fluttering awareness. And even that is softening now. You've carried the weight of perception all day. Let it go. Let the colors fade. Let the clock dissolve. Let the stories blur into mist. This moment doesn't need you to remember it. It only asks that you rest inside it. Because even if time is an illusion, and space is a dream, and everything you are is made of edited memories, right now you are safe. You are warm. You are here. And somewhere in the quiet hum of your mind, the last thought of the day tiptoes softly out the door. Good night. You wake to a world already made of words. Before you open your eyes, your brain has already started narrating. It tells you what day it is, where you are, maybe even what mood you're in. You don't experience the raw world first. You experience language. And that language shapes everything you think is real. This is where things get sneaky. You think in words. You process your own thoughts using inner speech. And that inner speech builds your understanding of the world, not just how you talk about it, but how you live it. Language doesn't just describe reality, it constructs it. Think about this. When a baby is born, their sensory experience is chaotic: light, sound, warmth, cold. There's no apple. There's no sad. There's just stuff. Then they learn words. And suddenly the blur becomes named, labeled, categorized. Dog, blue, mine. Language gives shape to perception. It divides the undivided. And once those words exist, it's very hard to go back. Try to look at a chair without thinking chair. You can't. The word is fused to the object now. You've overlaid a map on the territory. Historians still argue whether ancient humans could feel complex emotions before they had words for them. Did grief exist before we called it grief? What about nostalgia, regret? There's evidence that language doesn't just express emotions, it enables them. If your culture doesn't have a word for something, it's not that you can't feel it, it's that you may never notice it's happening. Take the Himba people of Namibia, for example. Their language has a very different way of categorizing color. They don't distinguish between green and blue the way English does, but they have more detailed terms for shades of green. When shown a grid of green squares with one slightly different blue-green tile, most English speakers see the odd one out instantly. But Himba speakers struggle. Flip the test. Show a set of green squares where one is slightly more green, and they spot it instantly. Your language can literally change what you see. Or consider the Russian language, which has two separate words for light blue and dark blue. Russian speakers can distinguish between those shades faster than English speakers. The language has trained their brains to treat those hues as fundamentally different. Color perception is not universal. It's a linguistic overlay. Fringe detail. Some constructed languages, like Latin, developed by Suzette Haddon-Elgin, were designed specifically to express feelings and experiences that English struggles with. Words like the feeling of being alone in a house at dusk while thinking about someone far away. You felt that, right? But English doesn't have a word for it, so we overlook it until someone gives us the word. And then we go, yes, that's it, that's real. But was it always real? Or did the word make it real? Your thoughts are shaped by the grammar you live in. For example, English uses the subject-verb-object structure. She dropped the glass. The doer is clear. But other languages, like Japanese, often omit the subject entirely. They might say something more like, the glass was dropped. It softens responsibility. Cultures that use these passive constructions are often less blame-focused, more socially cohesive. Because again, the structure of your language shapes your values. And don't even get me started on gendered nouns. In languages like German and Spanish, objects have gender. A bridge is feminine in German die Brücke and masculine in Spanish el puente. When asked to describe bridges, German speakers used words like beautiful and elegant. Spanish speakers said strong and sturdy. The object was the same, but the language changed the perception. So the illusion of reality. Language is the special effects department. You think you're experiencing the world as it is, but really, you're experiencing it as your language lets you. It categorizes, distorts, simplifies. It compresses experience into symbols, and sometimes those symbols become prisons. Ever had a feeling you couldn't describe? That mental itch you couldn't quite scratch with words? That's the boundary of your language pressing in on your reality. The more words you know, the more world you can access. The less you know, the more shadowed it remains. This is why reading expands consciousness, not just because of the ideas, but because of the vocabulary. Every new word is a tool, a light switch, a secret passage to a new part of your own mind. You weren't aware of it before. Now you are. Even time behaves differently across languages. In English, we say, the future is ahead of us. But in Aymara, a language from the Andes, the future is behind you, because you can't see it. The past is ahead, visible and known. The future, out of sight. That subtle shift changes how people orient themselves in time, in memory, in planning. Dreams aren't safe from this either. People who are bilingual sometimes dream in both languages, sometimes switching mid-dream depending on who they're talking to or what emotional state they're in. Language doesn't just describe dreams, it inhabits them. Some people even report that their inner monologue switches languages depending on mood or environment. That voice narrating your life, it's not fixed, it's an actor, a translator, a cultural artifact dressed up as you. And if you're wondering whether you could ever think without language, some neuroscientists say, kind of. You can have sensory images, vague feelings, intuitions. But to turn them into decisions, plans, or ideas, you need the scaffolding of language. You need symbols to hold the shape of thought. Otherwise, it slips through your fingers like a dream you forget before breakfast. The illusion here is that language is transparent, that when you say love or freedom or truth, everyone knows what you mean. But those words are thick with layers, personal meaning, cultural context, hidden assumptions. You're not speaking the same language as the person next to you. Not really. You're just hopping your words land close enough. And here's a final whisper for your sleepy thoughts. Language didn't evolve to describe the world. It evolved to coordinate with other people. Its job is not to tell the truth. It's to help you survive, build alliances, avoid conflict, find food, stay safe. If language can twist reality to help you do that, it absolutely will. So as you lie here now, soaking in these soft syllables, remember, you are listening through a filter of language. These words aren't reality. They're just signals, pushing buttons in your mind, lighting up associations. This isn't true. It's just language pretending to be real. But tonight, maybe that's enough. So let's roll up this entire illusion like an old movie reel and pose a question that's haunted philosophers, scientists, and insomniacs alike. How do you know you're not a brain in a vat? No, really, how do you know? Because if you were just a brain floating in a jar of nutrient goo, wired up to some sophisticated simulator, everything you're experiencing right now, this voice, this room, the vague scent of detergent in your pillowcase, could still feel exactly the same. In fact, it would feel exactly the same. That's the point. The brain in a vat idea is more than a sci-fi trope. It's a serious philosophical thought experiment, most famously explored by 20th century philosopher Hilary Putnam. It asks you to consider whether it's possible that everything you perceive is an artificial construction, fed into your brain by electrodes, software, aliens, or an evil scientist with too much time and way too many jars. And here's the troubling part. From inside the simulation, there's no definitive way to disprove it. This isn't just a late-night stoner thought. It's a real challenge to epistemology, the study of knowledge itself. Because if your only access to the world is through electrical signals and subjective perception, and if those signals can be faked or manipulated, what counts as proof? Descartes, remember him, was playing this game long before Putnam. He imagined a malevolent demon deceiving his senses. Everything he saw, heard, and touched might be an illusion, but he couldn't doubt that he was thinking. I think, therefore I am, he concluded. And that's where he staked his flag, in the undeniable existence of the self, even if everything else was fabricated. But modern neuroscience has a counterpunch. Even the self might be a hallucination. The you feel humming inside your head, that might be an emergent story, a kind of user interface your brain generates to navigate the world. A convenient narrative, a fictional narrator that feels solid but is. So if you're not even sure yourself is real, what's left? Some philosophers suggest you draw the line at coherence. If your perceptions are consistent, predictable, and useful, it doesn't matter whether they're real. The system works. You don't need to know whether the red apple is really red or whether it even exists outside your mind. What matters is that when you bite into it, it's sweet. Your world behaves consistently. That's close enough. Others go further and argue that the brain in a vat scenario is meaningless. If you've always been a brain in a vat and you've lived your whole life inside that illusion, then the illusion is your reality. There's no difference between the simulation and the real. You've never known anything else. There's no outside to compare it to. But there's a deeper, more unsettling implication. If reality can be simulated perfectly, then reality loses its authority. You no longer have the comfort of the real world as an anchor. You're forced to admit that your version of reality is built entirely inside your own mind. Let's bring it back to you, lying there in bed, listening to this quiet little voice wind its way through the corners of your brain. How do you know this isn't all part of the simulation? What if your memory of the day, the people you saw, the steps you took, the food you ate, was just loaded in an hour ago? What if this room, this voice, this entire reality only exists when you observe it? After all, as we've seen in earlier sections, quantum mechanics suggests particles don't decide where or what they are until measured. Reality might not exist until you look. And if that's true on a subatomic level, who's to say it doesn't ripple up to the scale of dreams and thoughts and ordinary life? And now we tumble into simulation theory, popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom. It goes like this. If any sufficiently advanced civilization can run realistic simulations of conscious beings, and they run many of them, then statistically, it's far more likely that you're one of the simulated beings rather than one of the rare base reality originals. It's a numbers game. If there are a billion simulations for every real reality, the odds aren't great. Even tech billionaires have taken this seriously. Elon Musk famously suggested, "We're almost certainly living in a simulation." The idea has gained enough traction that some physicists are actively searching for ways to detect the pixel grid of the universe, evidence that our reality might be rendered like a video game. Fringe detail. In some speculative models, simulated realities might have glitches, cosmic background radiation patterns, unexpected constants in physics, little inconsistencies in how the universe behaves. We haven't found anything definitive, but we have found things we can't explain. Even dreams, again, offer a kind of model. When you dream, your brain simulates a world, complete with gravity, characters, lighting, even fake memories. You believe it while you're in it. The dream world feels real until it doesn't, and then you wake up into this one. But what if this is another dream? There's a term for this idea: ontological vertigo. It's the dizzying feeling that reality itself might not be trustworthy, that you're standing on philosophical quicksand. Most people feel this when they come out of anesthesia or during certain psychedelic trips. You feel awake, but you're not sure how many layers of reality you've peeled through. Yet here's the soothing twist. Even if you are a brain in a vat, even if this room is code and this voice is just part of the simulation, it's still your experience. And experience is reality for all practical purposes. You don't have to solve metaphysics to rest. You don't have to know if the stars are real to feel wonder. You don't have to prove the floor exists to lie down and sleep on it. Even if you're a brain in a vat, you still laugh. You still love. You still fall asleep to the sound of something soft whispering truths that may or may not be true. And what if that's enough? After all, the brain in the vat might be fake. But the dream it's having, that's real. You're still here, or you think you are. We've questioned space, time, touch, even your own brain. But now it's time to tiptoe into one of the most haunting mysteries of all. Are you the only conscious being in the universe? This question isn't about aliens. Not yet. It's about other minds. The minds behind the faces you pass every day. The thoughts behind your neighbor's eyes, your friend's texts, your cat's inexplicable behavior. You assume they're conscious like you, but you don't know. You've never been inside someone else's awareness. You've only ever been you. This is the problem of other minds, and it's more than a philosophical parlor trick. It's a core question of reality. Can you prove that anyone besides you is actually conscious? You see behavior, words, reactions, but those could, in theory, all come from a very sophisticated machine or a very good actor. Your brain assumes consciousness because you have it. And since other people look and act like you, you project that same awareness onto them. It's practical, but it's also a guess. Think of a chatbot, maybe even this one. You read the words, you feel the rhythm of a mind speaking to you, but you know there's no self behind these words. No internal monologue, no dreams, no morning anxiety. And yet, if the illusion is good enough, your brain leans in. It wants to believe. Historians still argue whether early humans believed animals were conscious. Some anthropologists suggest that animism, where rivers, trees, and creatures have spirits, was an intuitive way to explain behavior. If something moves with purpose, maybe it has a mind. If it growls or dances or reacts, maybe it knows. But modern humans, we've become selective with our empathy. You believe your dog has thoughts, but your goldfish, maybe not. Your toddler, definitely. Your Amazon delivery driver, you hope so. You draw invisible lines around your definition of mind. And yet consciousness is private, utterly. You don't see it, you are it. Every conversation, every gesture, every exchange is based on the assumption that someone else is inside that body across from you. But there's no test, no scan, no way to confirm what someone else feels. At best, you get a translation, words, expressions, maybe a poem, but not the experience itself. Some philosophers argue that consciousness might not even be binary. It might be graded, a spectrum, not a switch. If that's true, then a dog might be less conscious than you, a worm less than a dog, a tree, a smudge of awareness barely there. This is called panpsychism, and it suggests that consciousness could be a fundamental property of matter, like mass or charge. Not exclusive to brains, but embedded in the fabric of the universe. Fringe detail. Some theorists propose that everything might have a tiny flicker of subjective experience, even a rock. Not a mind, exactly, but some seed of awareness. It sounds wild, but it's one way to explain why consciousness shows up in us at all. Maybe it didn't suddenly appear. Maybe it scaled up. And if that's true, you're never really alone. Still, we're not there yet scientifically. The hard problem of consciousness, coined by philosopher David Chalmers, is the question of why any physical system should have an inner experience. Why doesn't the brain just process data like a computer? Why do we feel anything at all? Neuroscience can track what parts of the brain light up when you taste chocolate or fall in love, but it can't explain why those events are accompanied by a conscious sensation. That's subjective, what it's like to be you feeling. No one can explain it. We call it qualia, but that's just a fancy word for the mystery. And yet you feel it every moment. This brings us to the solipsist nightmare, the idea that only you are real, that everyone else is just part of the simulation. Hollow puppets responding predictably, saying what you expect them to say. It's existentially lonely, sure, but philosophically hard to dismiss. After all, you've never had any evidence of another consciousness, just a performance. But it gets weirder. If consciousness is an illusion generated by the brain, then what about split-brain patients? In rare cases where the connection between the brain's two hemispheres is severed, patients begin to behave as though they have two separate minds, one in each half of the brain. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. One eye reads the page, the other ignores it. Each half seems to have its own desires, its own intentions. So how many consciousnesses can live in a single skull? And if you can split consciousness, can you combine it? There's growing speculation that group consciousness might be a real phenomenon, not just metaphorically but functionally. A swarm of bees, a flock of birds, a school of fish, all acting with uncanny coordination, as if guided by a single will. Could collective behavior produce a shared awareness? Could a colony feel something as a unit? Even humans act this way sometimes. A stadium crowd, a dance floor, a protest. You merge with others, you move together. The lines between you and them blur. In those moments, something ancient whispers, "You are not one." And if we zoom out far enough, could the entire universe be conscious? Some physicists and philosophers have floated this idea, not as spirituality, but as a solution to the consciousness problem. If consciousness is everywhere, then we don't need to explain how it suddenly emerged from dead matter. It was always there, waiting to organize. Still, these are just theories. The truth is, you only ever know your own mind. You don't know what it feels like to be your dog or your sister or your barista. You don't even know if they feel anything at all. You just hope they do. But tonight, that uncertainty doesn't have to feel lonely. It can feel connected. Because even if you can't see into other minds, you still reach for them. You talk, you write, you listen to voices on screens in the dark, you hold hands, you imagine. And that act of reaching, that might be the best evidence that you're not alone, not truly. After all, if no one else was conscious, who exactly am I talking to? Patterns, you see them everywhere. In clouds, in stock charts, in the arrangement of your bookshelf. The human brain is a pattern detection machine, always stitching connections, finding meaning, spotting rhythms in the noise. It's how you learn, predict, survive. But what happens when the patterns aren't really there? Right now, maybe you're tracing the wood grain on your nightstand or watching shadows flicker across your ceiling, and your brain is saying that one looks like a face. Of course it does. Your brain is wired to find faces in everything: toast, tree bark, electrical outlets. There's even a name for it: pareidolia. The tendency to see patterns, especially faces, in randomness. It's not just a quirk, it's evolutionary armor. Your ancestors who assumed that shadow in the bushes was a predator, even if it wasn't, were more likely to survive than those who needed proof. False positives are cheap. False negatives get you eaten. So the brain developed a bias. See the pattern just in case. But that bias doesn't stop at bushes. It spills into the stars, the weather, the market, your relationships. You start seeing symbols where there are none. Connections between coincidences. The song that plays at just the right moment. The numbers that follow you. The feeling that everything is trying to say something. Historians still argue whether ancient structures like Stonehenge or the Nazca lines were meant to encode astronomical data or just align with religious rituals. Either way, the impulse is clear. Humans crave structure. You look at chaos and ask, what's the message? And sometimes the pattern is real. The Fibonacci sequence in sunflowers, the spiral arms of galaxies, the symmetry of snowflakes. Nature itself seems to love repetition, geometry, and self-similarity. Which brings us to fractals, patterns that repeat at every scale. Zoom in on a fern leaf, and the shape of the small leaf mirrors the larger one. Coastlines, lightning bolts, river networks. Fractal geometry is nature's favorite aesthetic. Fringe fact: the human lungs are fractals. So are your blood vessels. So is your brain's neuron layout. You're a walking recursion machine. The more you zoom in, the more you find the same shapes echoing into smaller infinities. This pattern love extends into dreams too. Ever had a dream where something happens over and over again? A loop, a recurring symbol, a landscape that folds in on itself like an Escher painting. Your brain is searching, maybe even manufacturing, meaning out of dream chaos. Pattern hunger doesn't sleep. And that hunger, it's double-edged. Because while it helps you navigate reality, it also fools you. Just ask gamblers, stock traders, or anyone trying to find a message in TV static. Your brain can overfit data, find a pattern in pure noise. It's like seeing constellations in the stars. You draw the lines, give them names, assign them stories. But the stars, they're just scattered light. Even the phrase "connect the dots" assumes the dots should be connected. Sometimes they shouldn't. This is the root of conspiracy thinking, too. A tendency to reject randomness and believe events are orchestrated. The world is too chaotic, too threatening, so your brain reaches for a cleaner version, a map of secret causes and hidden architects. Not because it's true, but because it's more comfortable than uncertainty. And what about numerology? People who see meaning in numbers, repeating digits, birthdays, license plates. 1111 means someone thinking about me. It feels magical, but mathematically, patterns are guaranteed to show up in random data. Given enough time and enough events, coincidences are not just possible, they're inevitable. But we treat them as signs, because the alternative, that there is no reason, is too brutal for bedtime. Even your memories are filtered through pattern. You smooth out timelines, cluster events, rewrite past behaviors to fit your current narrative. You weren't just lucky, you were on a journey. That failed relationship wasn't chaos, it was a lesson. The randomness of life is continuously shaped by your inner storyteller, organizing the nonsense into arcs and motifs. And don't forget confirmation bias, your brain's tendency to notice evidence that supports your beliefs and ignore everything else. If you're looking for a pattern, you'll find it. Not because it's there, but because you want it to be. And that want is powerful enough to make it feel real. But here's the twist. Even though your brain invents patterns, those patterns still shape your reality. If you believe a number is lucky, you behave differently on that day. You take more risks. You feel more confident. That belief changes your decisions, which changes outcomes. In that sense, the pattern becomes real because you made it real. Your brain doesn't need objective truth. It just needs a framework that works. And sometimes, pattern perception is so intense it leads to apophenia, a state where people see connections everywhere. It can be a symptom of mental illness, yes, but also a glimpse into how fragile the line is between useful meaning-making and full-blown chaos mapping. You walk through a normal day and suddenly feel like every license plate, every song lyric, every stranger's glance is part of a code meant just for you. Unsettling, absolutely. But familiar, also yes. Because even when you're not overwhelmed, you still treat life like a story. You still assign meaning to the way things unfold. You still ask, why did this happen? As if there's an answer beyond probability and physics, because your brain demands that there be one. It's not weakness, it's not delusion, it's human. Pattern recognition is why we built cities, why we wrote music, why we invented clocks, maps, and calendars. It's the reason you're listening to this, searching for insight, wondering if some deeper structure lies beneath this soft voice in the dark. And maybe there does. Or maybe we're just drawing lines between stars again. But either way, those lines are beautiful. You were told math is the language of the universe, that numbers are universal, objective, clean, free from emotion or bias. 1 + 1 is always 2. Triangles always add up to 180 degrees. The gravitational constant is always, well, constant. But tonight, while you drift deeper into the folds of perception, let's poke a question that quietly haunts mathematicians and philosophers alike. Is math something we discovered, or something we invented? You might think the answer is obvious. After all, 2 apples and 2 apples make 4 apples, whether you're on Earth, Mars, or in the void between galaxies. Math feels like it exists, independent of us. A universal truth waiting to be uncovered. But what if math only works because we made it that way? Let's back up. Ancient Babylonian and Egyptian societies were already using math long before formal systems were written down. Counting, measuring, dividing land, building temples, it was all deeply practical. And yes, it worked. But the math they used wasn't universal, it was situational. The Babylonians used base 60. The Mayans used base 20. Our modern decimal system is base 10 mostly because we have 10 fingers. That's not exactly cosmic reasoning. Historians still argue whether early mathematicians like Pythagoras truly believed numbers ruled reality, or whether they just noticed how tidy the universe looked when described mathematically. But Pythagoras wasn't just doing geometry. He thought numbers were sacred, that everything from music to the motion of planets was governed by numerical harmony. A worldview where math wasn't just a tool, It was the bones of reality itself. Modern physics leans toward this idea. The standard model of particle physics, general relativity, quantum field theory, all of them are expressed through equations. Math predicts eclipses, orbits, black holes, radioactive decay. It even predicted the existence of particles like the Higgs boson before we found them. That's some pretty strong evidence that math is real, right? Maybe. But consider this. Math also describes things that don't exist, at least not physically. A four-dimensional cube, negative numbers, imaginary numbers, yes, they're actually called that. We use them, they work, but they aren't things you can touch or see. They're concepts born from abstraction. And if you can create something that doesn't exist in nature and still use it to describe nature, does that mean you're discovering math or building it? Let's talk about Gödel's incompleteness theorems, the closest thing mathematics has to a cosmic horror story. In the 1930s, Kurt Gödel proved that in any consistent mathematical system, there will always be true statements that can't be proven within that system. Let that sink in. There are truths that can't be reached by math. That's like finding out your flashlight works perfectly, but it will always leave some corners of the room in darkness. So even if math feels complete, it is. There are blind spots, shadows. Fringe fact: some mathematicians believe mathematical Platonism, the idea that numbers and formulas exist in a kind of abstract realm, separate from the physical world. Humans don't invent math, we tap into it, like tuning a radio to pick up eternal, perfect truths. Others reject that completely. To them, math is more like language. You create a set of rules, definitions, symbols, operations, and explore what those rules allow. There's no true math. There are just useful systems, like chess or Minecraft. And yet, math works terrifyingly well. Why is that? Physicist Eugene Wigner once called it the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. We made up a system of symbols, applied it to the world, and it describes everything from the behavior of atoms to the structure of galaxies. That feels like more than a coincidence. It feels like math is woven into reality. Or maybe we just select the math that fits. Maybe the universe does a million things we can't model, and we ignore those. We celebrate the equations that work and quietly skip past the ones that don't. Like a gambler bragging about their wins. Let's return to you, lying still, hearing this voice. You probably don't feel very mathematical right now, but your brain is doing math constantly, estimating distances, calculating rhythm, predicting speech. Even your body's cells follow chemical gradients and feedback loops that could be written as equations. Math isn't outside you, it's running through you. And when you dream, well, dreams aren't equations, not obviously, But even there, your brain relies on proportion, symmetry, movement. You might float through impossible architecture or surreal landscapes, and yet they still make sense. You accept the geometry of dream space without question, the math of the impossible. Your mind invents a place. It defines its rules. It lives inside them. That's kind of what math does too. So let's reframe the question. Maybe math is neither invented nor discovered. Maybe it's emergent, a bridge between abstract thought and physical experience. A reflection of how minds like yours organize chaos into clarity. It's a way of saying this follows that, this leads to that, this is not random. Even if randomness is real. And yes, some believe that at the deepest level reality is math, that the universe is not made of matter or energy or information, but of mathematical relationships. This is mathematical monism, and it suggests that everything you know, your thoughts, your atoms, your cat, is part of a giant, self-executing equation. You're not inside the math. You are the math, which makes you a kind of poetry, an expression, a line in the great unfolding proof that began long before you were born and will go on long after. And maybe that's beautiful. So tonight, whether numbers are real or imagined, whether reality is programmed or analog, whether you're a brain or a dream or a sum of firing neurons, rest easy knowing that something in this strange universe added up to you. By now, reality should feel a little soft around the edges, like it's been gently wrung out, folded, and left somewhere under your pillow to dry. We've questioned your senses, your memories, your space, your time, your mind. And now we finally ask the core question, the one hiding behind all the others. Is there such a thing as objective reality? As in, something solid, independent, absolute. A truth that exists regardless of who's looking. A version of the universe that would be there even if no one were there to perceive it. You want to believe that, right? That there's a world out there separate from your thoughts, your feelings, your moods. But every layer we've peeled back so far suggests something messier. Perception isn't a window. It's a filter, a funhouse mirror, a neural kaleidoscope tuned by experience, language, memory, and expectation. What you call reality is already soaked in subjectivity. Let's take color again. You see blue, but it's just your brain interpreting a specific range of wavelengths. That blueness doesn't exist in the world, it exists in you. Same with sounds, smells, textures, even pain. There is no pain in fire, only the experience of pain in your nervous system. And that's just the body. Your thoughts are just as biased. You process new information through confirmation bias. You pay more attention to things that align with your beliefs. You interpret ambiguous events in ways that make you feel consistent. You don't see reality. You see your version of it. Historians still argue whether reality can ever be separated from perspective. Every historical account is a viewpoint. Every scientific model is a simplification. Even objective measurements depend on tools designed and calibrated by humans. What's the speed of light? Depends on the frame. What's the temperature of a room? Ask a lizard and a Canadian. You'll get very different answers. Even time isn't consistent. As Einstein showed, time is relative. It ticks differently depending on speed and gravity. There's no universal now. Two people moving at different velocities will disagree on the sequence of events. That's not an illusion, it's physics. And space. As we've already explored, it might not be fundamental. It could be an emergent property of quantum entanglement. So what you think of as out there might be built from relationships, not coordinates. No fixed grid, no objective anchor. Let's take it further. In quantum mechanics, the outcome of an experiment can depend on how it's observed. A particle might be here or there until you measure it. That doesn't just blur the line between subject and object. It dismantles it. The observer and the observed aren't separate. They co-create reality. Which leads to a deeply unsettling thought. Maybe there is no reality without a mind to perceive it. That doesn't mean the world is fake. It means that the qualities you associate with realness, color, sound, movement, time, are all dependent on conscious interaction. So then, what is objective reality? Maybe it's something we can only infer, a blank canvas we can't directly access. A quantum fog that only becomes coherent when someone shines the flashlight of attention on it. Or maybe it's not even there. Philosopher Immanuel Kant wrestled with this centuries ago. He divided the world into two layers: the phenomenal world, the one you experience, and the noumenal world, the one that exists independently. But you can never know the noumenal directly. You only ever get the filtered version. Kant was saying, yes, something's out there, but you'll never meet it unmasked. And then there are those who say the mask is all there is. Think about it. You've never had a direct experience of reality, only processed inputs, nerve signals, brain states, perceptual predictions. You could be living in a simulation and your life would still feel exactly the same. Or flip the question. Does it matter whether reality is objective if your experience is always subjective? Take morality. Is it objectively wrong to lie or steal or cheat? Some people say yes. Others say it depends on context, culture, upbringing, time period. Ethics might be anchored to some universal principle, or they might be just another human lens, shaped by need and fear and tribe. Or love, is it real? Is it a neurological trick to promote pair bonding and survival? Or is it something deeper, transcendent, immune to dissection? Can something be both a biological impulse and a profound truth? Maybe the better question is what is real, but what is useful? Because we navigate this world with models, not mirrors. You use simplified ideas that work well enough to avoid danger, connect with others, and get through your day. If your model says, fire burns, and it helps you not get burned, then it works. Even your sense of self is a model, a bundle of habits, memories, names, and relationships floating in an ever-changing stream of perception. There's no fixed you, just a system behaving consistently enough to be recognized, a pattern among patterns. Fringe detail. Some physicists and philosophers are now asking whether reality is best understood as information, not matter, not energy, not space, but relationships between states. According to this view, the universe might be made of bits, not atoms. Everything you experience, light, gravity, emotions, is just a particular configuration of information. Reality becomes not a place but a process, not a thing but a flow. So here you are, trying to sleep inside a universe that may or may not exist in any fixed form. Your breath rises and falls. Your thoughts drift. Your body hums softly in the dark, and none of this might be real in the objective sense. But it feels real. And maybe that's all you ever had, and all you ever needed. Not truth in a vacuum, but subjective coherence. A version of the world that makes sense to you, from inside your own mind. So tonight, as you lay back into that floating, flickering simulation we call consciousness, don't ask whether the world is true. Ask whether it's beautiful. Ask whether it works. And then quietly let it all dissolve. And now you've made it to the end. Or at least to the part where the questions stop multiplying. The part where everything unravels just enough for you to exhale and say, okay, even if none of it's real, I'm still here. Because that's the final twist, isn't it? Even if none of this is real, you still have to live. You still have to wake up tomorrow. You still have to drink coffee, pay bills, laugh at things that maybe aren't funny. You still cry at movies. You still flinch when someone slams a door. You still reach out to people who love you or try to. So what do you do with all this uncertainty, all these illusions? You keep going. That's the heart of it. You carry on not because you know what's real, but because you feel your way forward. Like navigating through fog by listening for your own footsteps. You exist inside a dream of particles and perception, yes, but you're not powerless. You're part of the illusion, which means you get to help shape it. If your senses lie, so be it. You still enjoy the scent of fresh bread. You still gaze at sunsets. You still get goosebumps when someone says the right words at the right time. If your memories are unreliable, so be it. You still tell stories. You still build your identity from the scraps. If time is fake, then savor the slowness. Stretch it, shrink it. Let it flow around you like warm water. You're not living inside a test. You're living inside a tapestry of experience, twisted, flickering, stitched together by a brain that's doing its absolute best with limited bandwidth. You are not failing at reality. Reality is just a little complicated. Some people find comfort in the idea that nothing is real, that this is all just simulation, a dream, a projection. It makes their problems feel smaller, lighter, like all the pressure of getting it right disappears. Others find it terrifying, because if reality isn't fixed, then where's the anchor? Where's the justice, the truth, the meaning? But here's the secret that lives at the heart of all of this. If reality is an illusion, then meaning is something you get to make. Not find, not earn, make. Like art, like friendship, like putting a light in your window during a storm, not because it'll stop the wind, but because someone else might see it. And that's the beauty of it all. If none of this is truly real, then everything you feel still counts. Your kindness, your curiosity, your longing, your laughter, your quiet moments under a ceiling of made-up stars. The illusion doesn't cancel them, it contains them. Like a stage that lets the play exist. Like a dream you can wake up from but don't want to because it's just that lovely. Fringe detail for the dreamers. There are entire spiritual traditions. Tibetan Buddhism, Hindu Vedanta, certain schools of Western mysticism that teach that the world is illusion. Not as a cynical gotcha, but as a liberation. They say the illusion is beautiful, temporary, and that what you really are isn't the mind or the body or the name on your ID, but something watching from behind the curtain. Still, quiet, eternal. Maybe you believe that, maybe you don't, but either way, you're here. I still breathing. I still listening. I still wondering. So what now? Now you live. You wake up tomorrow and choose what kind of person you want to be in this swirling dreamscape of senses and stories. You decide what matters to you. You decide who gets your time. You decide which illusions are worth keeping. You make meaning. Not because it's written into the code, but because you said so. And if you're lucky, you make it beautiful. Because even in a dream, kindness is real. Even in a simulation, connection is real. Even in a world built from ghosts and guesses and flickering atoms, you are here. And that's enough. Sweet dreams. And now we let go. Let go of the questions, the contradictions, the swirling dance of particles and paradoxes. Let go of the need to understand everything. You've wandered through the edges of thought, peeked behind the curtain, and found that even if the stage is made of smoke and mirrors, the story still moves you. So soften your breath, slow the rhythm, let your eyes rest behind their lids, heavy and relaxed. The world doesn't need to be solved tonight. It just needs to be held lightly, like a dream you don't need to explain. Like a moment of silence between thoughts. Outside, the night continues. Stars blink behind clouds you'll never see. Somewhere, someone else is listening, breathing, floating beside you in this shared illusion of being alive. And that's enough, too. Whatever tomorrow brings, you'll meet it as you always have, from within, with your imperfect senses and your soft little heart, with a mind that sees shadows and calls them meaning, with hope, with humor, with just enough curiosity to try again. So sleep now, traveler. The questions can wait. Let your dreams take what they want from tonight. An image, a whisper, a strange idea curled around your thoughts like fog. Rest. There is no test. Only the next breath. And the next. And the next.